Hello and welcome to the Japan Archives, a podcast where we'll be delving into the histories and mythologies from Japan's long history. I'm your host, Thomas.
And I'm your co-host, Heather. We'll also be reading a poem for you every week and giving a little history about the poet who wrote it. Ikimashou!
Okay, I've clicked record. I feel like every time we click record, our brain's suddenly like, okay, we should do the thing now.
We should do the thing now.
So today I want to talk about something known in Japan as the Kimon, or in English, the Devil's Gate. Is that something you've heard of before?
Do you know, I have not heard of a Devil's Gate in Japan. I know there's several places.
Okay.
I know there's hell in a few places by name and also by possibly atmosphere, but no, I didn't know there was the devil in Japan.
Okay, so we have portrayals of the supernatural creature, the yokai, known as the Oni, which you mentioned in last week's episode, Momotaro. And you can find depictions of this creature in lots of different yokai compendiums. There's one in particular called the Konjaku Gazu Zoku Hyaki by a man called Toriyama Sekien. And his depiction in his book is interesting, as he would often include small tidbits of information alongside the pictures he drew. And he states in the picture for the Oni that their name is based off the direction for the northeast. And in Japan, the direction of the northeast is called the Kimon. And Kimon, like I said, translating to the Devil's Gate or the Gate of the Oni.
Now, a quick question: the devil and Oni, because in is it Western culture is the proper term? In Western culture, the devil is usually depicted as one particular being, and there's devils as well. But is the Oni for Japan, in this instance, is it one big Oni and many small Oni, or just all the Oni?
For the Devil's Gate?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So, what I can do is, I'll tell you exactly what the Devil's Gate is. The Devil's Gate, even though its name can mean the Gate of the Oni, it comes from the name for the direction of the northeast, and which is based on the Chinese zodiac. There's even compasses you can buy. There's a shop that I know near Ueno Station that you can go there and you can buy a compass that instead of showing the cardinal directions would have the old kanji for the zodiac creatures on them, so that you know wherever you may be in which direction is the Kimon or the Devil's Gate. And I'll stick a picture of them in the show note. But yeah, you were asking what does it mean in relation to the Oni? Is there one main Oni? Is there lots of Oni? But actually, the Devil's Gate is more or less based off the name of the Oni, and instead is something actually quite different. So the Kimon is the direction of the northeast, which is known as the Kimon or the Gate of the Oni. And this direction is known for its extreme bad luck. So it's more of a Japanese superstition, because basically the northeast in Japan is seen as that direction in which demons, evil spirits, and supernatural creatures can enter and pass through. It's the direction from which evil comes. Now, of course, there's certain ways which you can block this ill luck or these creatures from coming in that direction. Basically, that leads to the two pictures that I sent you before we started recording. So I want you to take a look at the two pictures. So you have one which is a plan of the Kyoto Imperial Palace, and the other one is a picture of the Tokyo Imperial Palace.
Ah, I see.
Now, if you look on the pictures, what can you tell me about the outer walls or the moats of these areas if you look in the direction of the northeast?
Okay, so this is the Tokyo Palace and the Kyoto Palace. Is that a fountain near is it Soragatsuji? And I feel like I'm missing probably an important detail, and you're going to point it out, and I'm going to feel very dumb. So I'm ready. Please make me feel dumb.
Okay, so if you look on the outer wall of the Kyoto Imperial Palace, on the top right-hand corner, so the northeastern direction, you'll see a little notch cut into the wall.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and if you scroll down and look at the Tokyo Imperial Palace, you can see a similar shaped indentation on the northeast, along the moat.
Yes, it looks like the Tokyo Metro Takabashi station. There's a little notch.
Yes.
Looks like.
So basically, This was done as a way to combat the Kimon, because basically these areas were quite important. It was where the imperial family lived at the time. And by placing a notch in the wall, it would basically halt the ill luck from being able to gain access. And it was a way to basically distill the effects of the Kimon from that direction, thus protecting the imperial palace.
So Thomas, wasn't there an imperial palace in Osaka as well?
There would have been back in the day, because Japan had this, necessarily call it a tradition, but basically most new emperors would move the capital in a way and then build a new palace. So for the Osaka one, it no longer exists. So to check if it had like a similar notch in the northeasterly direction, I would have to try and find some archaeological reports. So I'm gonna have to dig those out, but I can get back to you about that for sure.
Excellent.
So, like I've just shown you, there was ways of constructing outer walls of places and putting a notch in the wall to basically distill the effects of the direction of the bad luck. And similarly, you could do this through the use of temples. Like, temples were a religious and sacred place. Basically, because of their sacredness, they were thought to be able to halt the creatures and the ill luck from coming in the direction of the northeast. And due to this, you can find that on Mount Hiei, the temple of Enrakuji, which we mentioned many weeks ago in episode 2, it was actually built to help in blocking the evil spirits, because the temple is built to the northeast of Kyoto City. So yeah, like I've said, these temples were built in such areas as basically as a way of blocking and deterring evil creatures and ill luck from arriving in that direction. Of course, some people would say that that's not the actual reason, especially for this temple, because Enrakuji was actually built 6 years before Kyoto even existed. But it's still a nice theory nonetheless, because we do have other places which we know were specifically designed for this purpose, such as, like we mentioned, the Imperial Palace in Tokyo, when it was first constructed by Tokugawa Ieyasu. When it was back then nothing more than a castle, it was just Edo Castle. The Temple of Kenneiji in Ueno Park was constructed to protect the castle from the direction of the Kimon, because Ueno Hill is located in the direction of the northeast from Edo Castle. Sensoji as well is also purported to act as a barrier within Tokyo to protect it from malignant spirits. So these are the big main sacred and important places in Japan. But you can actually see it being reflected in Japanese houses. Houses with an entrance in the direction of the northeast are thought to be extremely unlucky houses, and it's basically said that it's best not to live in these houses. And it's actually a consideration that Japanese people take into account when viewing and potentially buying a future home. They will check the direction of the northeast, or even take a compass with them to double check that this house is safe from bad luck. Again, if the front door is not facing that way, you need to check for potential windows or doors that are also in that direction, so maybe like the back door. Rooms such as the kitchen and the bathroom are seldom constructed in the northeast corner of a Japanese home because of the direction of the bad luck. And it's even said that when they build houses at times, the water pipes are laid in such a way to avoid the direction of the Kimon.
So Thomas,
You're currently looking for the northeast direction in your home, aren't you?
I certainly am. As soon as you started saying Japanese houses are, and I went, oh, okay, because I did know Japanese houses are usually built so that the balcony that you can dry your clothes on, because pretty much everyone dries their clothes outside, are built to face the sun for the majority of the day so that you're able to, dry your laundry quickly. So I know, like, my balcony before, my balcony now, the sun rises. It's like, even in the winter time now, where the sun directs, I still get pretty decent sun on my balcony to dry my clothes. So I'm like, okay, well, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So I'm like, oh no, that's east. That direction is east. This is west. My kitchen. So I'm not sure about my kitchen, to be honest, because I'm pointing it right now, and it looks kind of northeast. So I'm a little bit worried, which might be why sometimes I burn my toast.
That might be the reason.
Huh.
So if you are worried, and you talk to Yoshi about the Kimon for your home and check it, I found a way that you can fix the bad luck in some way. So say you have to move into a home which is known for it having associations with the Kimon, or say now you think you're living in a home that has connections to the direction of the Kimon. It says you can retire to a house which is known for its good luck, so one that doesn't have any relations to the Kimon. And you can stay there for a short while and basically soak up the good luck of that house. And then after like maybe a week or so, you can then return to your own home. And by bringing the good luck into your new home, it would in effect exorcise the evil from your home. Now, I do have one last thing to say about the Kimon that I found in a book, which is, so if you're living in Japan and you're lucky enough to have a garden, I don't know if you have one, Heather, I do not.
Does having things in planters count? Because I have 2 cilantro planters and a rose.
In the context of the superstition I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say it doesn't count. In Japan, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, it's said that you cannot place a stone that is more than 1.5 meters in height in the northeast of your garden, as that piece of stone will encourage and give entrance to devils, supernatural creatures, and ill luck into your garden. So unless you're planning on putting a giant stone in one of your planters, I think you're safe.
I don't believe that my balcony would support a giant stone.
Oh, there you go. So at least your garden is safe. But yeah, that's all I had on the Kimon. And yeah, I just thought it might have been interesting.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know so much about the imperial palaces. I was aware of the moats because I think we've been to the Edo Museum. We saw the different things, like a lot of the castles and things were built with those protective moats.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize. Now I'm kind of wondering if all of the different, what are they called? The samurai lived, if they also have similar things and their structures as well. So now and the next time I go to a museum that has the replicas of the castles, I'm going to look.
Well, I'm glad you found it interesting. It's definitely a very strange belief, I think.
Well, based on our superstitions episode and some of a few of the things I've started to see during my time here, that there are specific reasons to do certain things based on, some of them have religious history. I think actually a lot of superstitions are just based on religious history, and a lot of things that people still do, even though Japan isn't a really hugely religious country. People still do a lot of traditions and superstitions based on that history, just because it's been done that way. Even if maybe the belief, I don't know if the belief is still there or if it's still there in the same way, or, just in case, I'm just going to do this, tossing salt over your shoulder if you spill a little salt.
So do you have a poem for me today?
Oh, Thomas, I do indeed, and I was so excited. So I was trying to find a poem for you, not in the 100 poems, 1 poem each. So I pulled up another book that I had, and I found a poem about autumn, because it has turned cooler now. It's definitely autumn. The leaves are starting to turn. I hope soon the momiji, or the maple leaves, are going to turn beautiful bright red and yellow as opposed to brown and fall. So I wanted to find a poem that talked about autumn. And I found one. I was so excited. And then I looked up the poet and found out, this poem is in the 100 poets, 1 poem each. I tried my best.
You tried your best, but inevitably we came back to our old trustworthy book, which we know and love.
Well, to be fair, there's 100 poems, 100 poets, 100 poems, so it's, there's quite a few to get through.
So who is the poet from today that you chose?
This is Sarumaru Taifu, or Sarumaru no Taifu, or Sarumaru no Taifu. His names I've seen different ways. Was a waka poet during the Heian period.
Okay.
However, I'd love to give you some information about him, but there is no detailed histories or legends about him.
What?
It's possible he didn't exist, and it's possible he could have been someone else.
Surely at the time of writing this book, they would have known if this person was real or not, no?
Well, it was during the Heian period. I don't have any information about his possible birth or his possible death, just that it was during the Heian period. It's possible that he might have been a prince, but yeah, there's no there's just not so much information about him, and I don't know why the poems were attributed to him. I'm not sure. So he is a little bit of a mystery, which is exciting, which now means I want to go look up more about him. But I thought it was just really interesting to how I got to him was trying to not find him in the 100 poems. And not just that, but also to find that he might not have existed.
Does he have any poems elsewhere, or is this poem mentioned in a different book?
He did have, because he's listed among the 36 poetic geniuses.
Okay.
But yeah, there's no records to prove that there's no records, there's no histories, there's really not much information besides that name and that there are poems by him, but they might have been written by someone else.
That's very interesting, very strange.
Now, this poem I'm going to read for you is also in the Kokin Wakashu. So this poem it looks like in 2 separate books. So, technically not just the 100 poems each. But yeah, I'm now intrigued because this person who has 2 names might not have existed. Which goes along with our, mysterious today. We have have our Oni and our directions and our superstitions. And
yeah,
now we have a mystery poet. So yes, now I will read the poem.
Okay.
Okuyama ni momiji fumiwake nakushika no koe kiku to kizo aki wa kanashiki. Okay, so Thomas, I like challenging you to see, did you recognize any words from the poem?
I heard 3 words which I recognized.
Okay, what were they?
I heard momiji, which is like the autumn leaves. I heard koe, which is like voice. And I heard aki, which is the word for autumn. And like you said, it was an autumn poem, so that one makes sense.
Oh, that was really cool. So my reading was clear enough that you could pick up those words. I am super excited. I wanted to change things up a bit. I'm not relying on translations. I asked the professor last night for a translation of this poem. So I'm doing something a little different rather than getting the translations from other sources. I asked the professor, and I had to look up a few words just to give it a little bit different because the words he gave sounded a little bit different in English, so I used a thesaurus last night. I was very excited. I heard a deer stepping on the fallen leaves and heard his call. I felt sad. That
is completely different, but has the same meaning as the book.
So I have the translation for the professor. I have the translation from the 100 poems, and I have a translation from this other book. They all have a little bit different nuance, but the meaning is basically, in the autumn, the sound of the deer is really sad. Yeah, and this one, forlorn, which is a beautiful word. I love the word forlorn. So it's essentially, which there are deer in Japan. I have not seen them out in the wild, but I have seen, so in Miyajima near the shrine, I have seen deer there, and I know there's deer in Nara as well, and there are deer in the wild, but I've not run into them, which is great because I drove a lot in the dark in the mountains previously, and I'm glad I did not encounter deer. But yeah, that's my poem, and I know it's a little bit sad. I like it
because, like you said, we have other books with these poems in, and to compare the professor's translation to other different translations, it's interesting to see how different they are, but ultimately the meaning is still the same. Like, it's just very interesting that you can have the same meaning via so many different interpretations.
The more I'm starting to learn just how much translation is really an art form. So that's my poem for this week.
Well, thank you for the poem. As usual, I'm still struggling with the idea that he doesn't exist. I mean, obviously somebody wrote these poems, so why not use your own name to get the fame of writing these poems?
Well, sometimes some people like to create things and just put them out for the universe to enjoy without receiving any sort of attribution. So perhaps this person, whoever he or she was, because it could also be female as well. It could also be a woman as well. Maybe they just wanted everyone to appreciate the beauty of the autumn leaves and the sadness, the feeling of sadness that autumn can create. Who doesn't love a good mystery?
I know, exactly. Maybe one day we'll find something that gives us an answer to who they were, but until that day, we'll just have to stay wondering. So thank you for the poem, and I hope you enjoyed the little bit of superstitions for today.
I did, and I'm going to be walking around my apartment after we're done to confirm the location of everything with my compass.
With that out of the way, thank you again to everyone for listening today. So until the next time we talk to you guys, thanks again for listening, and matane!
Matane!
If you've enjoyed the Japan Archives, please consider checking out historyofjapan.co.uk, a database we are making on Japanese history. You can also find the show notes for all our episodes here. If you're on Instagram, you can follow my account over at nexus_travels, that's NEXUS_travels.
We also have a Facebook and Twitter page, which you can find at Japan Archives. If you're interested in little slices of life in Japan, be sure to check out my website over at heatheroveryonder.com. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, have anything you'd love to hear about, head on over to historyofjapan.co.uk and send us a message.
If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to give us a rating and review over on iTunes. Thank you again for listening, guys. Until next time, bye.
Matane!